One. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 10. And today I have the very wonderful, she's really made sure we got through today after a few technical problems. Deborah Locke. And Deborah, first question, I was going to actually tell everyone who you are. It's probably better if you tell everybody who you are. So would you like to give a quick explanation about who you are and why I'm interviewing you today?
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Okay, I'm Deborah Locke. I grew up in Glenorrey. It was a small country town when I grew up, and both my grandfathers had been farmers in the Riverina, and they'd come back from World War One. They'd both been shot. I remember one. My mother's father, he had fingers missing. They'd been shot off, and he'd been captured by the Turks. And luckily, they'd bandaged his hand really well. And during the night, he crawled away with another guy with a broken leg and escaped. And I guess if he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be here today talking to you. So one of my things on my bucket list and dream list is to get over to Anzac Bay on Anzac Day and honour those people that gave their lives and went above and beyond. They were young boys. They were like 16 and lied about their age and signed up for World War One. And I think about how more people died of the Spanish flu during World War One than what were actually killed in World War One. And we've just gone through COVID, and I'm still rocking and rolling. I'm still shaking from the years that the world shut down. I don't know if other people are, but I am. And this technology, we're here and we're playing with microphones and earphones, and the fact that we can communicate in podcasts and get to people. And my story started a long time ago, and it all started. The seed of it coming was through alcohol and drug addiction, which my generational family disease is, that and autism. And so that set me up to not have the living skills to survive in a neurotypical world. And I got myself into a lot of trouble. I still get myself into trouble because I don't read the social cues. It's like I'm in the playground still and everyone knows the rules and I don't. And I stuffed up big time and, spilled the beans on corruption, and no one else was stupid enough to do it. Only a silly young girl.
Yeah, let's get into that because anyone that's watched Golden Mile Underbelly will remember the character that played you. But before we get into that, did you want to talk anything in terms of growing up? Because obviously the TV show really covered that about your life and really emphasized the difficult challenges that you had growing up. Did you want to speak to that growing up and how you sort of had that led you to get into the police force? New South
Yes.
Wales Police Force?
I had a juvenile record at 11 for uncontrollable and child at risk. So even back at 11, my first attempted murder was my primary school teacher. I came from a two-teacher school. I went to Middle Dural back in those days, and I'd shoved a potato up his exhaust pipe, and I wanted to kill him. I had this as I must have been 10 then, and I thought if I shove this potato right up, it's going to block the car, he's going to turn his engine on and the car's going to blow up and this guy's going to die. So I was that desperate at that stage in my life. I was isolated in an old farmhouse with two chronic alcoholic addicts that were insane. I was going to school. I was getting bullied by this lunatic that would lock me in the storeroom and cane me because I couldn't write my name. Right? And he belted me every day until I learnt my 6-time table. And I know even today my 6-time table. Like he won on that one. I've got like a problem with facial recognition. I've got a problem with maths. I've got a problem with direction. And this is all to do with autism. I'm on the spectrum like everyone else in my family, most of them. And I wasn't allowed to sit with the other kids. I had to sit up on the backstage, and it was just I lived in this scary, horrible, horrendous house where there was screaming and yelling and abuse every night, and then I'd go to school and I'd get tortured again. And so at the age of 10, I wanted this guy to die. By 11, docs had got involved, and only half of Glenorrhea had water at that time. It was bush back then. And they came out, this is when I got to high school, just got to high school, and I had a cousin that was in Parramatta Girls' Home. And Parramatta Girls' Home had a dungeon in it. Like, that was absolutely horrendous times
A
in the
dungeon.
70s. They had a dungeon, and the kids were abused so much. And my best girlfriend at the time, she'd been sent to Parramatta Girls' Home. So they said to me, we're not going to send you until the other two get out, and they're gone. And so I learnt to behave myself. I learnt to go under the radar, not to draw attention to myself, because my cousin had gone and she'd grown up in Gladesville. And when her time was up, my uncle and auntie were just too, I don't know what they were, that they couldn't even travel from, and this is not a very big distance, from Gladesville to Parramatta to get it. So she was just let out on her 16th birthday. And I knew, because Glenorrhea was a lot further away, that if I'd got into Parramatta Girls' Home, I would not be getting out to my 16th birthday. And that was a lot of years. And so people used to say to me, they'd look at me and go, what are you going to do with your life? And I'd say, I'm going to join the police force. And they would laugh. They would laugh because of the family I came from. You know, I had some interesting characters and bikies and other idiots in my family tree that had even managed to make the newspapers, and with some of their antics. And so there's no way in earth a young girl, troubled girl from Glenorrhea was going to get in the New South Wales Police Force. And this was when 1984 came. I got in. And my mother, as much as she beat at her chest and went, what are people going to say? She had a hit list of people she wanted to get. And so she was, there was a part of her that didn't stop the fact that I joined the police force. But she was very horrified when she found out that 2 years earlier, women weren't just doing sexual assaults and child protection. They'd started letting the girls answer the phones at King's Cross, and they were letting the women go out on the street from North Sydney and King's Cross Police Station. And hence, a very big adventure began.
Yes, it did. It definitely did. So, growing up, I remember you mentioned in another podcast that your mum and dad were obviously sort of very controlling and didn't sort of you were essentially the parent at such a young age. How was it? I mean, what's your earliest memories of sort of having to look after them? I mean, what were you, 11, I think you said?
Yeah,
When you were,
I was like 12. I started working on neighbouring farms, like budding carnations and picking strawberries to get money. And she came to me with a red rate notice, and she said, we'll lose the house if you don't start working. So I used to work every day after school. I'd work weekends. Their money went in grog. Like I'd have like a $1 secondhand uniform from the uniform shop, and I used to wear men's bib and brace overalls and just work on the farm. And so my life was pretty shitty. And she used to point at the other farms. She'd point at the other farms and go, this one stayed back and looked after the parents, and this one stayed back. And she'd say, this is your lot in life. You are going to never get married, never have children, and you're going to stay here and look after us. And there was only a brother, and she'd had him at 14, and this was like 18 years later, she had me. And I was their old age policy. I was to look after them. And they were younger than what I am now, and they were stuffed. The grog had got them. They were shuffling. They were going in and out of Korsakoffs. They were a mess. And they used to say to me, "Oh, you've got to get all your teeth out. You've got to get all your teeth out," because they had false teeth in their 20s. And I think it was that sort of generation. And they'd go, "Oh, if you get your teeth out, you'll never have a toothache." And I was going, "Well, I've never had a toothache, And they're going, "Yeah, but it'll never happen." And they're going, "And if you ever bring a baby home, we'll get it by its feet and we'll smash its head against a brick wall." And they're going, "You can never get pregnant. You can never have a baby. Your lot in life, you were born And luckily you were born because you've got to look after us. And it was hell. And in those days, people could see what was going on. People knew. This old lady up the back, she'd been an old retired school teacher. And at 10, I couldn't write my name. And I couldn't read or write. And she used to sit with me every afternoon and she'd give me this book called The Little Yellow Duck. And I'd be sitting there going, oh, why am I reading The Little Yellow Duck, you know? And she was just so determined that I was to have a chance. You know, she was saying everyone needs to know how to read and write. Everyone needs to know how to swim. Like, these are basic living skills. And I was so lucky that people have always come along throughout my life, and they've been angels, and they come along and they've saved me in different ways, you know. But yeah, that Mrs. Case, like, I'll never forget her, because she saw a young girl in trouble and she did what she could, and that little bit of kindness, you know,
Went a long
saved my
way.
life.
Yeah, it went a long way. So from about 12 to, so how old were you when you joined the police force?
20.
1980. So from about 12 to 19, obviously you were still living at home, looking after your parents. Did you leave school at a certain age to go work to take care of your parents?
I got my HSC, you know, and I went off and I did uni. I stayed there, and
Yeah.
I was the first one to go to get my HSC, first one to go to uni. You know, and but I just did all the work. I kept dancing. I just kept working and doing stuff, and I had nothing else to do. Like, to go and work all day in a paddock was a relief from them. You know, it was. But they basically, what they did was they killed themselves in the end, because I used to sit and drink with them, and I thought that was normal. And they got very angry at 25 when I stopped drinking, and they were sort of like, I had a free trip to Fiji, and I was like going, oh, this is great. And this is how they worked, you know, and it was my birthday, and they just went, you know, if you go, we're going to die. You know, the doctor said you've got to come and put us in the hospital. And so I sat all night with them in Hornsby Hospital and got them admitted, and they both died. But they had stopped taking their blood pressure pills, stopped it. They had malnutrition. Like, they actually, when they died, the doctors wanted their brains to be able to show trainee doctors the damage of alcoholism, and just to show that they had little hard, crusty brains. Like, you know, and I spent a year in therapy going, I killed my parents. But it was the disease of alcoholism that killed them.
No, of course you did.
You know,
Yeah.
they were just gone. But they were like my children. And so I still miss them. Like, they were funny. We would laugh together at times, but there was a lot of horror too. They were very violent.
I mean, you had every excuse, I mean, really, to go a different direction than what you did in life.
Well, I
So
did, and I was mucking up, like, to get a juvenile record that
sure.
young, you know. But it was all paper records in those days, and I guess when I joined, they missed that, and it was a juvenile record. But you know, other members of my family have chosen a different career path, and it hasn't impressed some people. But I loved being a cop. I loved it. It was amazing, you know, and it made me so sad that instead of fixing the problem and fixing institutionalization of corruption, they're going, we'll put out the spot fire. It was easier to give me a pension and tell me to go away than sort out Roger. You know, and everything I said about Rogerson was true.
Clearly.
He just kept going. He kept going. And it was this modern technology again that brought him undone. You know, like we all saw carrying the body of Jamie Gow out of the the storage shed, you know, with Glenn McNamara. Like, it was like in court, and I went in each day to watch the trial for that trial for murder. It was like a movie they put together. There is cameras everywhere. And these guys from A to Z were videoed on their behaviour for over a few days where they killed this kid. And so it was amazing to see. Like, in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, you could go in a Danga place and shoot someone, and and there was nothing that could be proved. But these guys put on a TV show for the cops.
So, you joined the police force. Like, honestly, my generation probably don't really even know. Well, I certainly did not know who Roger Rogerson even was. Apparently, he knew a few people in Padstow, where I was brought up, that I knew that knew him. So, was he the police commissioner at the time you joined the force in
No,
'84?
he Roger 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 just I don't know this bloke. I just kept falling over him like he bloody drove me crazy. It was like good people came into my life. He was a bad one that came into my life, and he had already been done for. He'd been caught on telephone taps and tipping off drug dealers and that, and so he was out of the cops. He like in '82, and or even before that.
Right.
But they were grooming him to be police commissioner. Like the guy was charismatic. He was intelligent. He was charming. He was a psychopath. He ruled the world. Like the way people bowed and scraped to be in his presence was incredible. And so it was a day where there was confusion with the red line between the good guys and the bad guys. I found the gangsters were more polite to me as a young girl. They were more respectful. They wore suits. They spoke to me like a human being. Some of the senior cops, they would tell me that police dog, I was lower than a police dog. It was the disrespect. Like they were so angry that women had come into the job at that time. And I think they thought if they gave us a hard enough time, we'd all pull up our petticoats and run away. And what they found was that the women were an asset, especially in de-escalating domestic violence or in fights and that, if there's a pub brawl on, you throw a few women in. Sometimes if they're not too drunk, it can help cool things down a bit, and the women are better at talking sometimes, talking down very heated situations.
So in 1984, there wasn't many women.
No,
So
no, it
I
was not.
mean, I mean, in 1984, when you joined, how long was it before you actually even went onto the streets of King's Cross?
Straight away. I started at North Sydney, but in less than a year, I was doing undercover drug squad. So, because there was no girlies, like there wasn't many female, and I was in the first wave of female detectives, and I did my high speed driving out at St Ives. They used to have the old oil pans, and you learn to drive, and I copped a hard time there, and because I was a girl turning up, but I sat one time and I was in a pub and I was sitting there and I had this old head of highway patrol sergeant there and an old detective, and both of them were saying, come and work with us. You've got to decide tonight. Are you going to go highway patrol or detectives? And it was one of those points, and I think we all get them in our life where we're at a crossroad and we go, which way are we going to go? And like the decision we make rules
Shapes
the
you.
destiny of the rest of our lives. And if I'd chosen highway patrol that night, and what it was, well, okay, I'm going to be sober. I'm never going to have a drink again if I'm highway patrol. And I'll probably, at high speed, I am a girly. And I'll probably wrap myself around a tree. And I thought, detectives, I can drink, I can party, it's fun, it's lots of laughs, I won't be on my own working, it won't be scary. And it wasn't a hard choice to go detectives. And but I sort of regret that decision every day because it, eventually it was the demise of my police career, which I loved. I went to uni because they told me I'd get promoted quicker. Worked so hard as a woman. It was 10 times harder as a woman. Even getting through the
Yeah.
academy, I had to pass all the same physical, I had to jump the same fences, do the same times. And they made it harder because I was a girl. And yet I fought so hard for my career. And yet that night I made a decision that will affect me for the rest of my life. And and it's always bloody Roger Rogerson that comes up in it. I just,
So, how long was it when you joined King's Cross? Because I'm trying to get people to remember that we haven't watched that Underbelly season 3 for a while. How long was it from when you joined King's Cross until you started seeing corruption in that particular? You probably knew about corruption before you joined, but how long was it before you sort of noticed, hang on, something's not right here
I'd seen
at
corruption
King's Cross?
beforehand. I'd definitely seen it beforehand.
Is it cutting out?
And but the uniform cops, like they put themselves out every day, and I didn't see it in the uniform when I was in uniform at North Sydney, and I'd heard about the toe track rackets, and I'd heard about cops smashing windows and getting paybacks from glaziers and that. I'd heard of a few silly guys in uniform that had done silly things, and we had a lot of laughs, and um, it was a fun time. But those guys put their life on the line every day. Every time they go to work, we were told at the academy, and because there wasn't many women, they were told, like, kiss your wife, leave on a good terms, because you may not come home from the shift.
You're right.
So
Yeah.
these guys, but the detectives, there was a lot of whispering and lots of meetups, and we were running around a lot with people like Louis Bayer and Billy Bayer and Lenny McPherson and Roger Rogerson. It was all the top crims had, Frank R. Kim is another one. It was all that lot that the cops spent a lot of time with. There was a lot of, in those days, there was brown paper bags that changed hands and a lot of meals. We'd run around. You'd send me drinks and meals. You get, like, it was out of control. It was crazy in certain pockets. It wasn't just a few bad apples. It was a systemic environment
Corruption.
in the detectives of, it was party time, and there was no mobile phones. There was no one to take a photo of anything. It was a time when the judges, if you went to court, they believed the police evidence. Like, the police would give the evidence and go, oh, it's not a signed statement, but he admitted to the crime. He said, you're too good for me, Sergeant Bloggs. I did it. And you had Chris coming in as a solicitor going verbal, and started talking about police verbals. And it's when people started to go, oh God, maybe the boys aren't always telling the truth. Is that possible? Maybe that drug dealer, might have had more drugs, but he got, do you want an indictable offence or what? There was crazy things going on at times with certain people and certain behaviour. And, and I found that at Parramatta, Roger had a lot of influence when I was at Parramatta Detectives. And then when I went to the fraud squad, I found I was doing Roger jobs again for his private inquiry agency. I ended up in Perth at one stage, and I'm sitting in this flash hotel going, gee, this is good. The cops are paying for this at the casino. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, this is a Roger job. This is something for Roger. Like, it was just because I kept saying, leave me alone. Like, I would never take a dollar, and I certainly had money pushed on me and put in my hand, and I'd push it back because I knew from my family history, if you take $1, people own you. And so I would never take money. I drank. I seemed to be in a lot of places where bad stuff happened because I was a big drinker and eater. I was a party girl, I'd come along. And they thought I was cool, but I wasn't cool. Like, being on the autistic spectrum, like, I was told that if you saw corruption and you didn't say anything, you were guilty of it too. And that could cost you your career. And I never wanted to lose my career because someone else was corrupt. And so I believed the rules and the policies, procedures of the New South Wales Police Force at that time. When I approached the commissioner, and he was deputy commissioner at the time, Avery was just about to leave, John Avery, and they said, we won't take you to the commissioner. We're going to take you to my best friend who ended up in court against a lot of time, Tony Lauer. And Tony got there and told me I didn't know what a detective was, and he was the one that told me I was a whistleblower. And I'm scared. I'm this little girl going to him, oh, you know, Roger's a bad person. And he's looking at me in horror, going, is she such a dickhead? And he goes, oh, you're a whistleblower. And I said, I built up the courage to say to this guy, you know, and the way he was looking at me and talking to me, and I said, what's a whistleblower? I had never heard that word. And he said it was cops that dobbing cops. And it was like it was a bad thing, and you don't know what a detective is. Whistleblowers Australia ended up starting in my lounge room. They used to have the first lot of meetings in my lounge room at Balmain. You know, I remember Dr. Jean Linane saying to me, you're a whistleblower. And I said, so I've been told, you know. And she said, well, we're starting up Whistleblowers Australia. And that's still going today. And basically they advised to do everything the opposite to what I did. You know, they go quiet, don't let them know. They'll shoot the messenger. And I put my hand up and just was loud and proud of going, these guys are all corrupt. And it's not just in the police, it's in any large bureaucracy. You rock the boat of what the culture is. Like they have all these rules and regulations, and this is how you're to behave. But when, you know, and then there's the culture. And if you speak up about the culture and what's going on, you know, so many people have been ostracized, but you can guarantee your career will be over. Like they
Yeah.
make an example of you so no one else will back you up or speak out.
In the show, you find your husband there
In the fraud squad.
he's in the fraud squad. Was that legit, or was that
Yeah.
just put in
Look,
there?
he was any bloke. There was a big office, and there was about 40 people, and there was me and another girl who had a very, very horrible hard time and been abused, and she was portrayed, and they had it being handcuffed to a pool table, but it was actually a lunch bench table. But and so with my ex-husband, we call him Chuckles. Chuckles is his nickname. Chuckles and this other guy with only two single guys in the place because they were all suit wearing, and we got together. But when I met him, I was already a whistleblower, and I was already a member of AA, and so I'd been in hiding for a few years with Michael Drury. Michael Drury was shot. He was a detective that had upset Roger, and he'd been shot at his kitchen window in Chatswood, and there was a TV or show made about that called Blue Murder, and it wasn't allowed to be shown in New South Wales for a very long time because the court case was going on, and Mick had a long history of problems with Roger. You know, Roger had wanted him to change his evidence after he'd given it already about a drug dealer. And so Roger had obviously got an offer to get this guy off. And Mick was saying, well, I've already given my evidence. I'm not changing my evidence. And next thing you know, he got shot in front. But also the big turning point, and it was at his kitchen window, but it was in front of his wife and two little girls, you know, Pam and the girls. And before that, there was a rule that you never killed anyone in front of their family. You know, this was like, and it was a cop. Like, you know, green lights had been given to people that Nettie Smith and that they could do anything but kill a cop, and they were doing armed hold-ups and doing stuff, and here you are, you have them shooting Michael Drury, and it just got out of control. It just got crazy. They just, they'd eat their own. There was money
Yeah.
involved and careers, and the party stopped being fun.
So when the show came to you, obviously, you know, a lot of years had passed. Because when I watched the series, I found your story the most intriguing, hence why I reached out to you. And one of the detectives, which I found out later, was just more or less just kind of like made up. When the series first came out, I was working long hours. I didn't even watch it in 2013 when it came out. I mean, I would see parts of it. I would watch it with my girlfriend. Then, like, I found it just 6 months ago on Stan. And so I started watching it, and from start to finish, I'm like, this Deborah lady. I said, I have to talk to her and one of the detectives. But I said, the I found out that Chook was dead. I would like to have talked to him. Yeah. So I was like, but uh, the show's accuracy in terms of those detectives, like the Trevor Haken, did you have much to do? Because when I saw you in your last podcast, you talked a lot more about Roger, which Roger wasn't even, I think it was obviously he was still alive and back when the show was originally filmed. Was he based on anyone in the show?
Roger.
Yeah.
Roger's a real person. Oh, you mean the detective? It was a compilation of about three different people I'd worked with. Like there was some character. Like we had to be careful. I
Yeah.
wrote a book. Watching the
We're gonna
detectives.
plug it. We're gonna plug it at the
Give,
end.
give
Yep,
that a
yep,
plug.
definitely.
And so from that, I sold the rights to that to Screen Time, and they had already done two Underbellies, and this was the third one, and it was the Golden Mile. So it had John Ibrahim and Kim Hollingsworth and myself, and we were the three main characters for that series. And like they made a number of Underbellies, but the Golden Mile was the third one. It
Mm,
was on that History and the Cross with the Wood Royal
mm.
Commission. But yeah, in my book, I wrote 70,000 words that the publishers said we can't even print that. That is so insane. Like um, we can't go there because it's over the top. And then the show, but the show it actually is tamer than what was going on. Like it was a funny, wild place. And and I know Roger was bitching about it that Kim and I weren't on the nude beach, but I used to do the nude beaches, and I actually got the guys on my team to strip, and it was Barramal Beach
Yeah.
in the morning, and go and swim, and like I was a mess at the time, like I was under Michael Drury, and I just did some ridiculous things, I just and it's like I don't know. I would hate to have had a boring life. I've traveled a lot. I've had fun. I've got no regrets. I just didn't think that I would make 30, and then now I've made 60, and I'm sort of quite impressed and shocked that I'm old now. But the thing is, all this era of these guys that I was dancing with, they're all dead. They're either dead or they're insane or they're in jail. And I think that the only thing that saved me was that I got sober. I got sober and pulled my act together and got married, lived in the suburbs, raised three children, and I just kept going. Like I think because of my family upbringing and background, I knew that you can run but you can't hide. That they were
Mm.
talking about killing me, and I was offered witness protection and changed my name and moved to Queensland. I know Trevor Haken, they moved over to New Zealand and all that, but I just went nah. So I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do lots of media. I'm going to put packages with people so that anything happens to me, and everyone knew I had the dirt on everyone. They were all going, oh shit, if she does die, it could be me that gets undone. And it actually kept me alive. Like it was actually the best move to stay loud and proud and under their nose and I just did Darling meetings of AA, and I push a pram up and down Darling Street at Balmain and and as they say, the days turn into weeks, the weeks into months, and the months into years. And I'm still standing. I'm not just standing. I'm not just surviving. I'm thriving. I have a great time. I have fun. So
And when the commission came in for, I just turned my video off because I was getting a few technical issues, so I turned my video off. When did MP, was it Mr.
John
Hatton?
Hatton, yeah.
Yeah, when did he first sort of? What year was it when he first reached out to you? And I mean, how was it like when the Australian Federal Police got involved? Because I'm just trying to think how it sort of was portrayed in the show and how actually was it in reality.
It was crazy times. It was insane. Like John Hatton was an independent. There was 3 independents, and they got the power, the majority power, and it was this balance in which he'd been waiting 20 years, and he was with Arthur King. Arthur King was with the Juanita Nelson stuff from when there was corruption back then. They were trying to get the truth out. Arthur King had been put in a boot of a car and nearly died, and Juanita, around the time that Juanita Nelson died, and John was just waiting for everything to line up, and there was this newspaper reporter, Morgan Ogg, and he was wonderful, and we'd have these little meetings at my house, and we'd go, okay, it's time. If we're going to do this, it's now or never. And John Hatton was amazing, what he did and what he achieved, and to get the Woodrow Commission was incredible. And what they did was they caught Trevor, and they said to Trevor, you need to film all the money that you're handing out to cops and that, and set everyone up. And he did it, and he has said he's really sorry he did it. It would have been easier to go to jail than what he went through.
He did.
And so I went around. I remember flying in little planes with Hatton, going down to Canberra, trying to get anyone else to back me up what I was saying. I did 8 stack decks saying there was corruption at the gaming squad, there was corruption at the fraud squad, there's corruption at Parramatta Detectives. And anyway, not one person had the balls to get that all go, oh, I've got a wife and kids, oh, they're going to kill me, I can't do this. And I got sort of tricked into, I got coffee date with Kimball Cook and John Deerfield wanted to have coffee with me, and they're going, oh, Debbie, you know about corruption, don't you? Because they'd had the Maloo matter, and also they'd arrested a couple of detectives at the gaming squad when I was there that were taking quids, and they had the money in the boot of my police car because I'd been away studying at university. And so there was this thing of cops sort of going, I don't want to lose my career because all this money was floating around. And so anyway, Kim's gone, you know about crap. I'm going, yeah, I'm autistic, I'm stupid, I'm young, I'm blonde. Next thing you know, I'm in front of Hatton, and I'm sort of the person that calls a spade a bloody shovel, and I was just went, oh, well, here we go. And I didn't ever dream that no one else, that the night that we were at Parliament House, Tony Lauer had called all the senior police to turn up in uniform to show their support and strength for him. Christine Nixon, I tried to talk to her at the front of Parliament House, and she was like, and I'm going, oh my God, like they'd all come as a blue wall, and John stood up with my 8 stack decks and just argued, and with the history of Juanita Nelson and some other matters. But I was the only one that gave current evidence of police corruption, and he got it. He got the Woodrow Commission. And from that's the first time ever, and all over the world, other police corruption commissions have followed what the Woodrow Commission did by using cameras and listening devices and catching the corrupt police in the act of what they're doing to prove it. Like it never happened before. They'd all join ranks and hold that blue wall and keep their stories together. And so this was a whole new world. And in fact, there was so much that they were given an amnesty, and a lot of them walked, over 1,000 of them walked. There was about 19 that committed suicide, and it wasn't until they started to get onto the pedophile stuff that, you had a high court judge hang himself the morning he was meant to give evidence, and in his front yard. And it was like, everything shut down. They just shut it down. They just went, this is too big, this is too much. We'll give an amnesty. We just have to get a clean slate, bring an outsider in, and start again, So it needed, anyone that says there was just a few rotten apples, and referring that I'm the rotten apple because I spoke out, I just laughed, because there was a sad, bad culture.
Yeah, right.
And they closed down the sorting squad. They closed down surveillance squads. They closed down the gaming squad. They closed down whole squads of like 60 officers. They just had to shut the place because there was so much shit going on, so much bad behaviour and abuse of time and money and stuff that the fraud squad got closed down. Like, we're talking about all the main guts of the New South Wales Police Force in 1996.
Gutted.
They just, and it needed a cleaned out and a fresh broom. It was a mess. The place was a mess, and everything I said was proved to be true. So
Yeah, absolutely. And is there any sort of anyone from those days other than your ex-husband that you still speak with?
to be ex-husband much these days.
Okay. But is there anyone sort of from the police force that you keeping tabs with, or
I'm not welcome to
from
the
those
ex-police
parties?
No, funny that. And my book got a really good rap in the police news about how let's hope no one ever does this again, how bad it was. It's like I've got some friends that are ex-cops, and their opinion of me is that you must be really autistic and nuts to have done what you've done.
I agree with. I mean, you have to be crazy enough to have that level of courage, because it was you versus an art, like the
Blue wall.
biggest blue wall. I mean, you up against it like anyone. Talk about a David and Goliath battle, right? I mean, you you certainly took it to them, and you turned it into an absolute global story. I mean, you're a hero, because it had to be. Someone had to call this crap out, right? Is there any gangsters that from actual drug dealing gangsters that you have any sort of fond memories of that
I
were?
still see some occasion. I got on a lift a while back at Brighton, and this guy's there, and he starts shaking. He goes, "I know who you are," But I still
Crazy?
run into a few occasionally and have a bit of a laugh and laugh about old times. And
They probably like you more than the blue wall, right? So
yeah, it's sad because like my biological family rejected me because of what I did. Going to the police, and it was a different sort of than the way they had. And then the police were my family. I was a detective senior constable. I've been there 12 years, and I lost them. Then they turned on me. And it's heartbreaking. It's sad, but it's about sticking to your gut and what you feel's
really.
right, and it's the only life I've got. And I pinch myself. I can't believe I'm alive, but I am. And I've pissed off a lot of people over the years. And some people are good. Like when I come into cross paths with ex cops, you can tell within 2 seconds whether they're for or against.
And
Their pensions, and they're not too happy.
the show portrayed Ibrahim as not being a drug dealer. He's an interesting character. I'm just trying to think, like, from the when you watched the series of the show, what was there anything that really kind of like stood out to you when they made the show, especially you and Kim, etc.? Like, was there anything from that show that you remember that stuck out to you that you're like, it happened, but it needed to be talked about a bit more, other than the obvious corruption?
Stuff, but I probably can't talk about it. Yeah.
Oh,
My
yeah, right.
tattoo. They had to get
I don't want to get you in trouble.
yeah, I had a tattoo. Like it's like that was very out there at that time, especially in the cops. I was probably the first female. Now you see them with arm sleeves and all that. It's very common. But back in and like when you joined, we had this Maury Vane was a doctor, and you had to get in your underpants and do push-ups, and I don't know what that was about. Maybe it was just to see if you had a tattoo or not. I got that later when I was drinking. I think the show, it's a snapshot of a era. They did the Razor Gang, and they did Melbourne, and I think they did a really good job. You know, they highlighted, they got the character, like, you know, yeah, it was good.
It was good.
Kim's still out there. I hear from Kim occasionally. She's another interesting character that you might want to get on. It's sort of, she came from a police family. She had 3 sisters, and her father and uncles and all that, they were all cops, whereas I'd come from an era where they were bikie. And so she ended up a prostitute up the cross. And we used to laugh because I came from more of a bikie family, and yet I ended up
Yeah.
there in uniform, you know. And so I think, you know, and John Ibrahim, you know, he's a little bit different to the rest of his family too. Like the 3 of us ran our own circus. We ran our own show and have been masters of our own destiny. And it's interesting, the 3 of us are all still alive. I think that's a bit of a bloody miracle. And we're all still standing. And there's so many around us that have crashed and burnt. So many of
Yeah.
us that we were with in those days that haven't made it, that aren't with us now. You know, and I have a lot of grief over when I was in the box. I was in the box for 6.5 days at the Wood Royal Commission, and I was 26 weeks pregnant with my son Hayes, and the cops had barristers, and they were there, and they were arguing that the police weren't corrupt. And this is after they've shown all the Trevor Haken films and that. And they're there and they're hounding me, and every cop that I'd mentioned had a barrister, and they let them cross-examine me. And I was sick as a dog. I had the flu. And I'm in the box and they're yelling at me, and all of a sudden my water broke. and I went into labour, and Hayes was born at 26 weeks. He was in an incubator for 3.5 months, and he has brain damage, and he's got autism and global delay and epilepsy, and, you know, so every day I have repercussions from the fact that I was a whistleblower. You know, every day Hayes needs assistance with dressing and showering, and he's at a day program where he's one-on-one. He has to have a person with him all the time. Like, being the mother of a adult child with disabilities is horrendous. And what the scary thing is that what happens to him when I die? You know, I've been his sole carer for the last 14 years, and we have so much fun. We travel, and he loves Elvis, and we go to parks every year, and we go to Tamworth, and we go on cruises. We have this great time, you know. So I think it's wonderful that I've got this 6-year-old forever that I'm having joy with, but I worry about what's, you know, like the extended family go, oh, we'll just stick him in a group home, you know, and it's like, that's a horrible thing as a parent. You know, I'm still working every angle I can. I'm dancing hard. It's the $1,000,000 question, you know. But I don't know. You know, if I hadn't have been if I had just shut my mouth like everyone else, he wouldn't have these disabilities. You know, so it's just not affected me. It's, you know, or if I'd gone to Queensland, but a lot of people had died in. I say a lot of people. There's quite a few that I'd heard of at the time that had mysterious mishaps and suicides and that. And like, if I changed my name to Betty Sue, I probably would have just got pushed up, fell under a train, you know, and Betty Sue would have died. And so, like, I could have quietly slunk away. And, you know, and so I've done a big fight for disabilities and started an autism group that went for years, and try to support and help other people. I was at a carers lunch today that I run once a month. You know, life is hard, but you just got to do it a day. You got to have the best day you can, and yeah. I mean, I've never been one of these quiet little pedals that gets sad, gets in the corner and depressed, and you know, implode and suicidal. Like, I'm sort of like, all right, who do I have to kill? I'm very loud. I'm like, how do we fix this problem? You know, how do we sort this? And that's my personality. To my
Likewise.
So
likewise.
it's caused me a lot of trouble, but caused the New South Wales Police more but they needed a shake-up. They needed a shake-up, and
You just needed someone crazy enough to basically turn the little hourglass upside down and say, time's up.
game on.
It's not. It's
Yeah,
time.
like
Yeah.
Hatton, like Kimball Cook, lucky Kimball Cook, bloody pointed Hatton in my direction and said, "He's a crazy that you can, that'll do it," because no one else would. So it's
No,
amazing journey.
I'm sorry to hear about obviously your family situation, but what you did, you know, your sacrifice changed the state policing for the better. And I think you've got a lot to. I know I it's very sad to hear what happened with your family, but yeah, I mean, don't take away from the absolute. Forget the giant feat that you were able to do, and as a fellow autistic person, it took someone special like us to break the mold. And so, on behalf of everyone like us, thank you for leading the way in courage and our value that we bring unique to society. I mean, it wasn't a neurotypical that called the whistle.
Neurotypical couldn't do it. Like, I think there's some companies that want people on the autistic spectrum because they are driven, they are focused, they work harder, they follow the rules, they love rules. If you start work at 8, they're there at 8. They take everything very literally, and I just didn't understand that I was never going to get in trouble. Like, the party was never going to end. Like, and they were doing some pretty outrageous, crazy things. And but it was when they were taking money off pedophiles, that was when I drew the line in the sand and went, "No, guys,
Yeah,
this is just,
that's next level.
yeah, this is
I mean, drug dealers are one thing, but
pedophiles, and all the bills." And Franca Arena, she got up and she started. She had all the information on everyone, and they just shut it all down. They were going, "This is so big, we can't," because it was politicians and it was very high people, and so it took 20 years before they started looking into pedophiles again, or it's just, I don't know, it's just bullshit.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time. I mean, I could talk to you all day about I think we should have another podcast specifically about neurodivergence, and I'll love to sort of pick your brain on that. And my wife certainly wants me to pick your brain on that as well. Is there any like you want to sum up with your book and what you're doing now, and a little bit about sort of how you're sort of staying busy? And I mean, have you thought about writing another book?
Look,
And
I keep writing. I've got a heap of books in
excellent.
my roof, but I did one. And I spent a couple of years on it, and we had a doco team, and it was just amazing. And I got a suppression order put on it by the coroner's court, and I just got a bit broken, and I haven't had anything published. But I keep saying it. I'm going to have to go back and get some stuff published, and I've worked on some movie scripts and stuff, and I just, I don't know. I've been
Well,
having
you've
a
got
good time.
so much. You've got so much to share. One of my big advice for you would be get on get on YouTube, and start like I mean, you must know a lot of people. Obviously, there could be a few gag orders and you know bits and pieces of things you can and can't talk about. You obviously know where the red line is. But you have so much interesting things to say, and I'm sure you could really build something, on your social media to that's fascinating. I think you have an extremely fascinating story, and taking out the family situation aside, I think you've got a lot of, positive things potentially that could come out and help a lot of people. And you've been doing that for years, and you're doing that right now with your autism stuff. So I think you're a great woman, and I really do thank you so much for your time. And I really hope to see you, Deborah, smashing social media. And I'm here as a digital marketing expert. Anytime you want to have a chat about that, that's free advice. Because I will definitely want to see you, loud and talking about everything that you've gone through and your story, whatever you're willing to share with your kids. and the toll that it's taken. Don't let this story just go quietly into the night. Like, I mean, even your story, even outside of the police, even your childhood. You know, how many people right now today that could watch a YouTube video that are struggling that only you can understand them. I mean, you could have even a direction like that, helping people, because there's people out there that I can't help because I don't live their life. You have lived their life. So don't ever take away from the value that you can still very much add, even just on social media with just everyday people and building an audience around.
Thank you,
You're a
Andy.
special person.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Well, we have to stay together. Right? Neuro weirdos have to stick together, as I was saying to you earlier. But yeah, definitely want to see you. I mean, today I felt like your story was just like, it was like kaboom. And I'm like, you got so much to say, Deborah. At the very least, you can leave it to your other extended family, even non-family, to really understand what you went through, what you've gone through, and as a reminder, and especially, like, I will look at your as a fellow neurodivergent autistic individual. I look at your story and go, you know, is your courage only because of your autism? I think you're just a courageous lady.
So I think my mother was tough. She was tough.
I think
If
that
it
has to do
survived
more
her,
with your life. Yeah, I think it has to do more with your life, honestly. Like, I think your courage is more your personality, what you've gone through, everything you went through at childhood gave you a hard exterior, made you tough, made you. Not all heroes wear capes, and so you know, um, I'm just trying to spin a good thing that's come out of your whole life and its horrible situations. And hopefully I can be another angel to kind of point you in a direction to say, hey, don't let your story go. Like, I reckon you've got your childhood could help a lot of people. Your time in the cops could help a lot of. I just think the internet now is like your oyster to share whatever it is you want. And if you change one person's life, it's worth it.
yeah, so true, so true.
Thank you very much. You can close it out in any way. You plug your book and close it out in any way you like to.
Watching the Detectives. I've got a website, so Deborah Locke, and yeah, just don't let the bastards ever beat you. All I can say is, bring it on, be strong, be true to yourself. Don't ever try and be a puppet for people. Don't ever try and not be true to yourself. So, wishing everyone the best.
What a great way to, and it did cut out. Just want to make sure it was called Watching Detective. What was, the book was called?
Watching the Detectives, Deborah Locke.
Watching the, and where do you buy it from? Is it Amazon?
I think yeah. Get it on the internet.
Yeah,
I'll
find it. I'll find it. Yeah, I'm gonna watching the detective. I'll find it and I will put links to it. If you've got links that you want me to specifically, if you've got an affiliate deal or anything like that, you let me know, email me and I'll put them in the description below so people can find your book. I recommend everyone read it. I think Deborah's got a crazy story to share. So.
I'm still alive. I'm still, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And there's a few people that want to kill me, so still now.
And you are the personification of what doesn't kill you, mate. If anyone can shout that from the rooftop.
I'm just like, bring it on, I'm here. Yeah, and I've actually, I think it worries it. I think they go, my God, she's crazy,
Well, crazy enough to make a huge difference in our world. So thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thanks, Andy.